Before we get into this episode, I would like to make a quick disclaimer that all of Society Inspired's interviews and the information we share are 100% for learning experience and to hear the different sides of the various issues we discuss. We never endorse nor support violence, and we are committed to promoting peace. I want to create a safe space for learning and comfortable place for people to be able to start to speak. Hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 8th episode of Society Inspired. My name is Gemma. I am 15 years old and a Palestinian American teen. I am super excited to have Addison Rose here as our special guest for episode number 8. Would you like to introduce yourself, tell us your story, and also share your preferred pronouns, please?
Of course. So my name is Addison Rose. I go by the pronouns of she, her. I am a junior in high school, and I am also the DC youth mayor. So my job really is to look out and advocate for many of the youth of Washington, DC, figure out the most prevalent issues that they are dealing with and problem solve.
Yes, thank you. So I want to talk about voter suppression that's going on. So could you please give a brief synopsis on what is happening regarding that?
Yeah, of course. So basically, right now, we're living in a democracy where the right to vote for whomever you want to represent your interests is basically an inalienable right. Yet there are certain people in this country who want to make it exceedingly difficult for communities
Yeah.
of specifically of color to do so because they don't really value them. This, of course, looks like specifically like marginalized and minority groups. So voters are suppressed in so many different ways. That comes from you must like show a valid license. They only accept certain forms of documentation, and if you don't have like two forms, then you can't vote. There's no
Yeah.
alternatives. Polling stations are extremely far away from a lot of people's homes. There's limited voting hours. A lot of misinformation has been sent out around election periods. No water or food for voters. Standing in long lines are allowed, and so much more. I mean, it's so upsetting, which is why I've been trying to really take a stand for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a basic right. If
exactly.
yeah. What are some of the states that have made it harder for citizens to vote, and what do they have in common? What will the political effect be of this?
Of course. So I've noticed that it's been a lot of specifically red states. A lot of Republicans haven't exactly been too happy with the voting process, and I've come to see this happen mostly following the election, the most the most recent election with Trump. They weren't exactly happy about him not winning, and it caused an uproar. So
Yeah.
this has really been shown in Texas. So many election officials who decide to encourage voters to request mailed ballots can face actual criminal charges.
Mhm.
In Georgia, it's a crime to give a bottle of water or snack to people waiting in line to vote. And in Florida, another red state, it requires voters to provide a state ID number or specifically the last four digits of a social security number to obtain a mail ballot, but provides no other alternative if a voter has neither of those pieces of identification. So they're 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 really taking it's very personalized in why they're doing the things that they're doing. And I think it's really upsetting because it's not even attacking a certain, group.
Yeah.
It's attacking everybody in
Mhm.
every way, shape, and form. And so the final like political effect could really be citizens voting against those officials, maybe, or people really not being able to vote in those bigger elections.
Yeah, because I know and we have seen it. It can definitely sway the political effect one way or another.
Exactly.
is the whole point of voting, is to have everybody included. Um,
Exactly.
Something else that you talk about a lot and that I also want to discuss, in what other ways other than voting can people partake in the political process? For example, those of us too young to vote.
Mhm. Yeah. So I was trying to figure this out a lot for myself because I was like, well, I know a lot of the issues I'm passionate about, including voting rights, but what exactly can I be doing or other youth, kids like me,
Mhm.
teens specifically? So I do know that 16 and 17-year-olds can volunteer to help at polls. It
Oh,
really depends on the polls near you, but
okay.
I know 17-year-olds definitely can volunteer to help at polls during the voting process, as well as everyone can encourage family members to exercise their vote. And then they can also help others register to vote. You can, register people in your community to vote.
Okay.
And then like social media, which a lot of us have, you can advocate for many of the issues you care about, that there are officials who are running that also stand for those issues. And then like volunteer to assist at a candidate's campaign. You know what
Mm.
I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
specifically a candidate that you agree with many of their values. I would volunteer and help in any way. I mean, there's no there's nothing that you can do, I would say, that's greater than anything else. I think every piece plays a part in the
Yeah,
greater good of the
for sure.
political process for all of us.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that on the podcast
Mhm.
before with social media. It
Exactly.
comes and goes so fast, like issues, people care 1 second and they don't care another, but it still runs through their head. So it's still worth it a bit. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Um,
Mhm.
do you think more expansive or restrictive voting laws will be passed coming up in the future? Where are we on that scale?
I think we're making progress seeing as there's more people advocating for voting rights because it's like I said affecting everybody. So with laws like the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the For the People Act, and so many more that are being advocated for, I do believe that there's actually hope. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, like I said, there's multiple groups that are being affected by voter suppression. So I think everyone is really realizing that it's an issue and trying to figure out ways to combat it, which is why the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is so important because that law in and of itself will make it so that officials are checking every law that has to do with voting rights or voting in general to make sure that they are not discriminating to any group
Oh,
specifically.
okay.
And yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I think we're moving in a positive direction, but I do think there is a lot of work to be done. And I only think a lot of those voter suppression laws have come into play because certain groups have been specifically upset with how it's affected their party
Yeah,
or
of
candidates they
course.
support.
Yes, of course. Okay, well, that's some good news, but there's always more work to be done. So
Exactly.
I totally see where you're going. Um, I know another extensive conversation that you have and you talk about a lot is the importance of DC DC statehood. Why is that so critical? Why is it so important?
DC statehood is so critical and so important for so many reasons. DC citizens, it's so okay. First of all, there's taxation without representation. DC citizens pay the most in federal taxes per capita in the nation and even have a higher population than states like Vermont and Wyoming. Yet we still aren't represented or don't have a seat at the table. We're also required to register for selective service, pay federal taxes and state taxes,
Mhm.
and then other members of Congress are still making decisions for us. Um, There's also a lot of pros that could come with us being a state. It could grant us control over our own budget to spread across issues that are so prevalent to our specific state.
Yes.
Um, More money could go into schools. We could receive federal aid. Money could be put into more programs for our youth. Like
Mhm.
specifically, I'm passionate about anti-gun and weapon programs
Yes.
for our youth, and so much more. So it's extremely important. But unfortunately, not everyone wants it. Not everyone wants it for us. People think it's unconstitutional and
Mhm.
um, and whatever else. But we definitely deserve a seat at the table for as
Yeah,
much as we do, and we contribute to the nation as a whole.
for sure. I completely agree. How do we gain the government's attention to achieve statehood? And I'm kind of talking about people outside of DC, but you can also open to people inside of DC too, because I know there's a lot of things happening there too.
Yeah, definitely. So I attended the day that I spoke at the 58th anniversary of the March on Washington. I also spoke at a DC statehood rally.
Yeah.
So I would say that, number one, you could peacefully protest and rally for DC statehood. You could hold school-based assemblies or events to get many of your peers' attention. You can educate others so that everyone can truly take a charge in the process. And then social media, like I've stated, which everyone seems to have, you can repost a lot of things that you're seeing that truly advocate for DC statehood, and just like educate your peers on what's going on
Mhm.
with everything, and help others understand why DC statehood is so important.
Yes, I think I watched that speech that you did at that protest,
Yeah.
um and I knew it was critical before. I then after watching that I was like, wow, okay, like this is vital. Like and it needs to happen. Like it's deserved. Um so how about the future of statehood for DC? Do you think that you're getting closer to that and having representation that is deserved, like I just said?
Yeah, so I think that we are getting closer.
Good.
There's a lot of people on Congress that do want statehood, but then there's also, I think, more who do not. But I think the number is slowly starting to increase. I think it'll take, of course, more time, but we do have people like President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris who are in support
Yes.
of statehood. So I think that's a pro. I think we are heading in the right direction.
Agree.
Um, but I still think that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to advocating for it, educating others, and continuing to fight for it because, like I said, people believe it's unconstitutional and don't necessarily care or think that we deserve it, though we do what everyone else does, if not more.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I do think that we are making progress, though.
Okay. Whew, okay.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot, but that's what activism is. That's what comes with it.
Definitely.
It can be very just a lot, like you said. Yes. Are there any resources you would like my followers or I to read, watch, listen to? I always link these down below because very helpful.
Yeah. So I'm actually hoping to start a podcast coming up. So I will definitely give you the link to that whenever I'm able to get that started. But for now, I would say to watch the news, read the newspaper, follow your favorite social justice advocates on social media to really just stay up to date on what's happening now, all of the issues that are most prevalent now, specifically amongst our youth, and really try to problem solve, figure out ways that you can be proactive in your own communities. And then I'm also One of my initiatives when running for DC Youth Mayor was that I would hold town halls for the youth of Washington, DC,
Yeah.
where they're able to voice many of their opinions on issues that they find most prevalent in the area.
Okay.
And so I'm actually kicking that off very, very soon. I'm in the works with my team and everything's really coming together. So I would just stay tuned for that and I can give you, access to all of that information when I have it. So just stay on the lookout.
Yes. How long have you been the youth mayor? May I ask?
Yeah, of course. So I've been youth mayor I was elected over the summer. So there's an organization called the Marion Barry Youth Leadership Institute.
Yes.
And that was created by a previous mayor of Washington, D.C., Marion Barry, who has unfortunately passed, but he created this organization to get youth of Washington, D.C. to be proactive and advocates for themselves, as well as to learn more about like college readiness, social justice issues, ways that they could also throughout the summer they can get paid to work. And so this is like
That's
it's a
awesome.
lot of kids in like low income communities who could use that extra money in the house. But they're also getting a lot of great information from the organization. And so that's how I pretty much got voted in by the members of the organization, which is like it's a, maybe 200 students, maybe a little less, but it fluctuates every summer. And so the voting period tends to happen over the summer every year.
I think that's awesome. I love that. Okay. I
Yeah,
just wow, okay. I think that's a great opportunity because younger
yeah,
voices definitely don't. I know a lot of younger people don't speak out because they just don't think they'll be listened to or taken seriously.
exactly, which is especially why I'm trying to be the advocate for others, and really help everyone understand that our voices matter too, because I think a lot of youth we don't know our government officials. We don't really know who's taking charge of our lives right now. So I think it's so important that we are taking charge of our own lives
Yeah,
and being advocates for ourselves.
yeah. I was like on my personal page, I just was like, okay, this isn't doing anything. So I just like create this whole thing. And that's what drew me to you. I was like, nothing is stopping her. So I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Lastly, where can my followers find you on social media or other platforms so they can keep up with you and all the amazing things that you're doing?
Of course. So actually all of my social media platforms are at it's Addison Rose. So ITSADDISONROSE. And so that includes Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and Twitter. I am most active though on Instagram. That's where you can really stay up to date with a lot of the work I'm doing, a lot of rallies and protests coming up that you can be a part of, or
Awesome.
more ways that you can be helpful through social media.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much again for taking
Of
your
course.
time to do this interview. It was amazing. So much information, learned so much. Make sure you follow Addison on all social media platforms and check out all the activism posts, movements, the amazingness that she's doing. And make sure to follow all of our other social media platforms so you don't miss out on future interviews and things that we are doing. I hope you enjoyed episode 8 of Society Inspired, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.